gonna do one second. Okay, where is the screen? Okay, the screen working, everything is okay?
Okay, let's start.
Okay, let's start. Shall I start to talk?
Yes.
Okay, good evening to everyone. Welcome back to our appointment and the second lecture regarding the urban scale, let's say. I'm Silvia Covarino. I'm an associate professor at German University in Cairo. I'm an architect, educator, urbanist, and then coming from Italy, a background in Italian University, Roma La Sapienza. And it's a long time I'm working in the field of urban living and urban design. Well, today we are going to have a discussion, let's say presentation and observation, and later you can easily type your question in the live session. And the topics today regarding the city is the reading the city, contemporary urban space, and landscape. It's a kind of reflection for the student, for all of us. We are working in the topics of the context, not only the building as an object, but we are working we are talking and working and designing and shaping also the surrounding area around it. Well, I decided to start from Kevin Lynch. It's a quite fundamental reference for each architect and designer. Okay, it's based on 1960, and the publication is like a pillar of our background as an architect. Okay, and it's a description of the image of the city, and we are going to touch this point now. And the element of this composition, if you're going to consider the city, as a collage, as a mosaic, as an organism, and the structure of this system, because we are not able to play any game if you are not in touch with the single element, or if you are not really close, or we cannot know well the single element to create any kind of composition. Well, about Kevin Lynch, just a brief introduction for all of you as a student. Probably you already know, or you already studied something about him, but just to give a summary: born in 20th century, educated in Yale University, the Polytechnico Massachusetts Institute of Technology, now again the professorship in MIT. 1963, we are talking about the professor is located in USA. In 1960, 1970, in the great time and in the explosion of the urban design and urban planning. And as you know, through the theory of planning and urbanism, the American city became as a reference. All our urban development is based on this experience. Okay, it was also consulted the state of Rhode Island, in New England, the Medical Center, Boston Redevelopment Authority, Puerto Rico Industrial Development, and different institutions. This is a kind of selected books from him. Okay, the good form of the city, place, and managing the sense of region, site planning, wasting away. All the books are a great support for any designer, urban planner, and they are touching the different scale of the city also, and the territory. What time is this place? This is one of the selected books where Kevin Lynch deals with the human sense of time, a biological rhythm, and may follow a different bit from the deducted by external official and objective time pieces. Then City Sense and City Design is another publication, complete record of one of the most environmental design aspect of the author. City Sense and City Design brings together Lynch's remaining work, including the professional design and the planning project. How the different books are touching the different scale, also the professional practice. Good city form is a connection between the human value and the physical form of the city, because as an architect, now we are always concentrate on the aesthetic, on the physical form, on the building, on the object, but we may consider also the social aspect as a very important, as I've mentioned in the previous lecture regarding the public space and the COVID. How is it really important to take care whatever we are going to design, whatever we are going to plan and to shape, is a space for someone, and the needs are the basic of any urban design. Anyway, back to the book. Self as place city form into one or another of a three theoretical structure: cosmic or ceremonial center, the machine city, and the city as an organism. As I've mentioned before, because no, the city is then of course depending on the scale of the city, village, town. I mean, any kind of urban settlement reflects such dynamic of the city, but city and megacity has a different impact. Image of the city, with the city form actually mean to the people live there. What can the city planner do to make the city image more vivid and memorable of the city dweller? No, this is really touching the visual aspect. No, we are working with the visual. With sketch, with photo, with video a lot, and now with the support of technology. But it's really important not to really understand which element of the image of the city, of the portrait of the city we are going to touch and to work on. Of course, to take a decision, to build, to plan, and to redesign. The image of the city, Kevin Lynch said that's about the city is constructed in a space, but of a vast scale. Okay, very large. A city is described with the surrounding and elements, and all the element of the composition. This meaning explain that people perception of the city is very important. Now, working with the image of the city and the visual visualization, this means working with the perception. How is the understanding and how the people are reading the environment where all of us we are living. Going through a city form, the viewer's mind an image of the city. When we are talking about this title of the books and this theory image of the city, we are talking about how the people they are living the experience in the space, in the urban space. Elements like nodes, paths, district, age, landmark make a city, and later we will see one by one. To make a visual plan, the visual plan is considered a map. Analyzing the form and the public area. Okay, the form is meaning the building and the shape of the space, and the public area is like a relation between solid and void and the space in between. Understand problem, opportunity, and use them in designing a city. This is our aims, our rules. Well, when we are talking about the large scale, I try to put some reference regarding Cairo because we are the place where we're talking about, the place where I'm working, and probably most of you are related and connected with this interesting, large urban utopia, no? And Cairo, the original, the historical city, and the new development in the last 20, 30 years, and now the new vision and the future of the new capital. And this is including a large portion of territory and an infinite and the development is going in an infinite. I don't know. We don't know. We are here and we are looking to this new project, a new station, and the growth of the city. And this is why the consideration of this large scale is a very good example, Cairo. Now, distinctions were made among the different physical parts of the city. These parts were organized in a personal, meaningful mesh. Now, when we are talking about this different part and physical part, we always are connect our mind with a certain image or reference or icon. I mean, to orienting also ourselves in the city, and landmark icon, some point of reference are really important. This is a view in the Nile, like a special building, a particular building, a huge building, and a tall building give us a sense of reference. Probably before the city has a different skyline. The Islamic Cairo got a different kind of landmark, but this is a contemporary view. Now, people were reconnecting perceived fragment in meaningful patterns. Well, as before I've mentioned about the perception and the relationship within the urban environment, okay, and the people. This is passing through the interpretation, through the reference to the many fragments of the urban collage at the city. And when we are talking about icon and reference, of course, the skyline of the city is very important. This is one of typical image of Cairo and sky and the rooftop and the kids when they are playing with the kite, no? And at the same time, icon reference is not only the Sofitel, it's not only the Cairo Tower, but is also this a little element is part of the environment where you are living. Probably for the people who are living in a certain area, in a certain content district, this is a little element, Pigeon Tower, are representative, and by the way, is an icon of Cairo. Concept of legibility is no try to go deeply step by step through the Kevin Lynch reference. Kevin Lynch say to be easy with which people understand the layout of the place. Okay, understand the layout of the place is meaning understand, let's say, the from where to where we are moving. And this is a typical example of users of the city, okay, habitants and citizens really know very well the connection from one point to another point without Uber, without GPS, without Google. Okay, and understand the layout of the city, people make a mental map. You know, in our mind, we are able to reconnect all the point where we are moving from one place to another place, and to generate this kind of connection. The concept of imageability. Okay, another term is being introduced from Kevin Lynch regarding the quality of the physical object, which gives observers a strong, vivid image. And I put behind these references in New York. It's a landmark everybody can easily recognize, can reconnect with this icon and landmark. It's a square and the shape of building. The high measurable city will be well formed. Okay, if we have a good reference in the city, probably there is a good design, there is a strong design of the build form, would contain distinct paths. Also, this is another interesting, very important, the connection between one point and another point. They should be instantly recognized. That means easily to recognize an icon in Paris, the Tour Eiffel, and easily to recognize in Rome, the Colosseum, and some things like this. Well-formed cities are dependent upon the element because, okay, if there is a good form, is a good composition, each element depending from one to another, and they make the views of the city imaginable. Remembering your city on image is meaningful. Okay, this is also really important. Memory is another part of the process. Well-designed paths include special lighting, clarity of direction. Of course, if we are talking about paths and connection, this is meaning there is a good quality of the urban space. Similarity with nodes, landmark, district, and depth. These are the 5 key words of Kevin Lynch. This element plays in a good form, increase the human ability to see and remember patterns, and it is this pattern which make easy to learn. This is some graphic representation of, let's say, a mental map, a sketch. These elements of Kevin Lynch are summarized in the map. And the circle represents the major element in the city, the nodes, the reference, and which the image of the city has been derived from the people. It was a kind of exercise, the graphic representation, how to represent this concept and this theory in the image of the city. This is a zoom in the legend. Okay, have a look at the very simple. Consider the quality of the graphic, and the element and the representation. We are talking about kind of map plan of the city in 1970. Now, but how is interesting to see the 5 different element on a different icon and symbol and reference. This is also part of the language. When you're going to create a mental map, a person's perception of the world is not as a mental map. All of us, we are able to elaborate in our mind through some icon, symbol, and graphic. This is just a very, very common map of the city. It's not a technical map, of course. And it's an individual home map. What we know from the world, we easily, for example, with my students, many times I make this exercise, especially in the beginning of the studio of the such course in urban field. Please try to summarize, try to sketch quickly by your hand your important point of your visit, especially in the site analysis and the site visit. Is really useful to work with this such exercise. And mental map of the individual can be investigated. Of course, you can update, you can include more and more stuff by asking direction or landmark. Maybe you can start with like a basic reference, and then for your survey, for example, you can add a lot of information. You can ask, for example, to the local one, the reference, name of the street, name of the place, and the possible short routes and connection. We have different kind of graphic. This is now in terms of mapping of the city. This could be recognized a kind of it's not a technical map, but it's like a touristic map where we can have a look in London. Some reference, of course, is out of the scale, is out of the proportion, but easily it's a graphic representation where we can recognize some element in the city, if we are familiar or not, because London is really famous, by the way. Another way to represent is not only sketch as the previous one, but we can use also the name of the district and put some symbol, some icon, and some keyword, and they give so different space, in the map to some landmark and the name of the zone and the neighborhood. This is the way to divide in the micro zone. This is the way to try to understand, the big mosaic by the little part one by one, and the connection one to another, they are close each other. Of course, in the case of London, the river make an important role. And let's say once you design or you're sketching in your map the Thames barrier, is a good reference. Then you start maybe with the bridge and then the important neighbor, and little by little you are going to complete the mosaic. We can go through also to improve our understanding of the city and our study, our analysis or whatever, through also the historical map. And through the comparison also, and the map, we can have a look through the cartography of the city, to the different scale. This is, for example, I took one subject, London, from the sketch map, from the touristic map, from the graphic representation, we elaborate with the kind of icon for the tourist, and then through the historical representation. And this one, it's also, let's consider kind of a historical map of London, and regarding the property and the different social level, the poor and the upper class. We can try to resketch the map. This is also a very good exercise, especially for you students. It's excellent. I remember when I was a student without AutoCAD, I just started using at the end of my study, and we used the tracing paper always and print out a lot of map. It was redrawing and resketching. And this is still a good exercise to understand the proportion and the form of the city. And once you're going to draw by yourself, by the tracing paper, by your sketchbook, you will never forget, because once you're drawing something, this is still in keeping your mind. And by the way, the urban analysis, the site analysis, the study of the city is the first sign on your project. Doesn't matter if you're going to design the large portion of the city or just is a little element, but the connection with the texture and with the urban tissue around, it's very, very important. Well, we can go also through, this is also representation, it's not a mental map, of course, but it's another level, to understand the mosaic of the city. And here I was working through the big urban block. And through different part. This is a solid and void, I think it's probably 50,000 scale, this one. And consider large portion of the city. Of course, the barriers, the Thames barrier is still there as a reference. And this is the separation between the north side and the south side from the River of London also again. We can have a look through the infrastructure, another important things, through the connection, through the street, the name of the street are really important, and the junction point. When we are going to work with this network, infrastructure, street, or mobility, complete mobility doesn't matter. No, it's really important for us to recognize part of the city, to localize some point, and to consider the distance between one point and another point, and the north, the connection. Of course, the transportation and the mobility, especially in a city like that, like London, it's a very important. This is another way to represent. It's not exactly in proportion, but the node of the station give us an orientation in the city too. And in London, the railway and the tube service and the map, it's basic to orienting yourself. Back to another representation, technical map, let's say, it's a solid and consider the different element. Look, the physical space and the natural sign of the water. Now, the mental maps can be evaluated by terms of identity, what makes a particular image unique among city and structure. Now, there's a method to sketch any sign, any icons to be really important to recognize this urban space. How the image is spatially formed and meaning, okay, the form of the space, the distance and the connection. What value are attached to the image through which one can locate himself? I mean, each one of us we are able to sketch and to elaborate a completely different mental map, okay? Every person, in fact, has a different mental map according to his understanding of the city. And we are coming back to the issue of the perception and understanding the space around. Public image. Each individual holds a unique image of his or her city, a visual representation that guides through the daily life. This is also connected with the daily life. And here we are coming to the social aspect and to the people needs, because it's not only reading the solid and void by the technical map, by Google or whatever, but it's trying to understand the practice every day in the city and the way we are living the space. Researching a sample of this image can help a planner to describe a public image of their city. And this is, believe me, is very useful for students, for planner, whoever is touching and managing the urban space. How to make a public image? The public image of a city was created in two ways. By the verbal interview, by making a quick sketch map. We can take some information, and by field study on foot and train of the server. Now, I always recommend to my students, now through the phone, and later we will touch also this point, working in the city. Also, if it's not possible to work, especially in the such city of Cairo, where it's very complicated, it's very difficult, the distances are very large, and most of the time we are moving from one point to another point of the city, from one place to another place. But there's a method also if you are in Uber, if you are in taxi, except if you're driving, of course, but you can take some shot from the city, some reference photo. You can fix today with this application some routes, but you can keep sketching. You can keep your diary and your notebook, and you can put some reference there. A map of every city, this is also, again, is London, or is another way to take some note from each place, to take some reference, okay? And put some memory, some observation, some important idea between the memory, between the perception, and between the possibility of change and the opportunity for this place. In the book, Lynch argues that people in urban situations orient themselves by means of mental map. Now, again, we are coming back, and this was the experience of them. It was comparing three cities, Boston, Jersey City, and Los Angeles. And of course, not just through one urban chain, one urban context, you can really come out with the theory. Always there is a practice in a 2-3 different levels. This is a three representation or three form and map of this city. And it came out through this experience of three cities and the comparison and this theory based on all the things we are discussing until now, through this process. Lynch proposed that this mental map consists on 5 elements, and I highlight by the color: paths, edge, district, node, and landmark. Now, paths are the routes along which people move through the city from one place to another one. Edges are boundaries and bricks in continuity. But it's like an interruption, and we can have, of course, many different forms of boundary. Districts are characterized by the common characteristic, okay? Maybe in the special neighbor, we can have a particular common point. Nodes, strategic focus point for orientation, like square and junction. And this is regarding the mobility and the network in the city and the connection. Landmark, external point of orientation, usually easily identified by physical object in the urban landscape. Of these 5 elements, paths are especially important according to Lynch science. These organize the urban mobility. Of course, the rule of the paths is the rules of the structure of the city. Another graphic representation how, to summarize and how these 5 elements are working together. They must be combined together, okay? And basically, when we are talking about paths, we are meaning about street, rail lines, trains, And there is some example below. And the node, strategic meeting point, square, junction, train station, and there is a mentioned Plaza Mayor in Madrid, for example. Landmark, physical objects serve as a public reference point. For example, we can consider Bilbao Guinea Museum as a reference, and we are not talking about tower or obelisk, but we are talking about a function, a building, as a complex building, because it's an interesting intervention in Bilbao. Edge, clear transition zone, a linear boundary, waterfront, for example, can be considered a kind of edge. And district, when we are talking about quarters, neighbor, other section of the city with a distinctive character, like, for example, Soho in London, Toronto, Chinatown, and Little Italy, this kind of thing. Now, there is a short video to share with you about these 5 elements. I will start. Let's have a look, just to have a visual perception of the topics we are talking about visual environment. Very important to figure out, you know, with some image. Each city has a different element, different shape, combination of these elements. Okay, this was a summary, a short video to give you a different perception. Well, back to the clear mental map and the way to work with this application. No? I mean, it's always, no, I've mentioned many times, it's useful not to orienting, okay? But be careful, because we must put the information available to be read, to be useful. This is the instruction usually you get for any site visit in your studio or any course. Okay, a legible mental map gives people an important sense of emotional security in the framework of communication and conceptual organization, and either the intensity of everyday human experience. This is an example from the book Image of the City from the theory of Lynch, and how graphically to represent, no? And there are this note, this legend, it's really useful to think and to work on the similar approach, okay? Point of confusion, lack of relation, isolation, no? And the use of icon, okay? This is the language of urban, okay? We are using a certain icon, no? We are sketching a certain line and proportion, and each sign, each reference in the map behind is well explained very well, usually in the legend. This is a basic exercise to plan and to design any kind of urban space. The city itself is a powerful symbol of a complex society, argues Lynch. An environmental image has 3 important components: identity, to recognize an urban element and separate entities; structure, the relation of urban element and the other object and the observer; and meaning, it's a practical and emotional value of the observer. These 3 elements together, okay, they are going to generate this this involving of the users of the city in the urban environment. The urban inhabitants should be able to activate from their own story and create the new activity. Lynch presents his work as an agenda for urban design, and we're still using after 50 years. They should design the city in such a way it gives room for the 3 related movements: mapping, learning, and shaping. Now, Mapping is activity now to recognize, let's say the survey, let's say perception. Okay, learning through the mapping, you're going to learn something, you're going to know the environment, and shaping then is the action to design and to change the condition. Mental map and space recognition map. This is a kind of step advanced from the mental map, and try to, let's say, consider a certain space, with some observation, with some consideration. It's not only the survey, but is also the action and the evaluation. When we are talking about Kevin Lynch, we are using in the School of Architecture, of course, but this was a link for many other theories and reference. For example, in 1990, Frederick Jameson, for instance, referred to Lynch, to consider the complexity of the objective and abstract representation of the space. And then Henri Lefebvre, also in 1974, was really connected with the Kevin Lynch. The space is not just out there, but is a mathematical entity or a priori category, but always social produced. Okay, and again, the way to represent this space, is not new, because it's not Kevin Lynch invent the map. Okay, it's a long time. Cartography born a long time ago, and the way we are going to elaborate and to represent the city on a different level is part of the process of the mental map. If I look, for example, London, I took as a main reference. We have an historical map, and we have a new way to represent this district and this area in the city. Well, in addition, the technology, the use of the mobile, the GPS, this is also related with this. We are able now to match the theory of Kevin Lynch with this possibility, okay? And this is also related also with the social media, to imagine how orienting ourselves and how to consider the reference in the middle of Cairo, in the middle of traffic. And now, because Uber, they're using the GPS, but before the taxi driver or the normal people were using a normal map and orienting ourselves through this representation. It's our capacity of orientation when finding something, when we learn, and the GPS give us a support. In one side is a very good thing, because we can really easily move from one place to another place. Is another side, you have to be very careful, because sometimes we are losing the capacity to learn from the city. We are only concentrate in this digital application. And another issue is the connection on the place, and connect the place with the image of the place. For example, the use of Instagram to share your location, to reconnect all the place where you passed, or your routes, or your day, or your holiday, or your leisure time. Okay, and objectively, the urban elements become increasingly subjective by means of locative media technology. Well, it's a very contemporary, by the way, the theory of Kevin Lynch, and I'm sure all my students, like you, we are using a lot. This share my location, send my location, and also in Instagram, in your social media, you're sharing a lot the place where you are, and this connection with the GPS through the image of the place, it's really matching with the Lynch, is talking about elements of the city that are publicly visible to all the people. And so this has become out of the theory. And we are using a lot, now we are using the phone a lot, but previously we are using, before the sketching and take notes, and then the camera, and then the digital camera, and now we are using a lot of the phone. This is Lynch primarily was emphasizing the role of the visual sense. Now we are talking about to take a particular frame of the city, to cut particular portrait and shine, and then nighttime and daily time in the city. It is different. The light play an important role in the city also as a different shade we can have during the day and during the night. Well, this is, we can say Lynch was working and anticipating this issue, and we have to really work on. to mix together the technology, but at the same time to really improve our capacity to work with this visual perception as an architect, as a future designer or planner, whatever. The connection and the reference for Lynch with the contemporary theorist or the urban level debate. For example, in 2008, the mobile city, this reference from Malcolm McCulloch, is also was connecting this experience of mobile media and urban design to the experience of Kevin Lynch. Also, the connection with the city as a chain of the cinema, of the movie, and there are particular cities. This is an example, for example, from Will Wenders in Berlin. How the city became, a protagonist of this urban chain, and how the role of the visual impact, the chain, the perception of the city, and the modern city increasingly been dominated by this script image, and the roots in the cinema was really, really high. And the connection also with the photographer also, not only this is, I really suggest to have a look the work of Gabriele Basilico, an Italian photographer, one of the best known Italian photographer, and he was really concentrated on the urban scale in the various city, Milan, where he started to work to perceive a special, the industrial area, the industrial city, and the production area, and then Beirut, Bolzano. Bolzano is also not part of Italy, and then Berlin. But it was not only concentrated in the urban landscape, in the urban context, but also in the urban landscape and in the periphery of the city. And this such work, the technique was using, it was working very well with the light and with such detail of the city and the quality of the photography, and he was able to capture a special portrait of the city and a special image, a special place. And he was working in many different contexts, okay, and it's very easy to download the works of him and some picture and to observe and have a look the way he's going to capture a special angle of the view. And I was comparing also with Cairo and with Egypt, when you're talking about the landmark and icon and the power of the photography. To be honest, I don't know who is the photographer of this image, because I took from a group sharing a very great shot of Cairo and Egypt in general, but also the power of the representation, the use of the monochrome style, and at the same time to use the colorful style. This is another image, and probably from Garbage City, I'm not sure, but anyways, it's regarding the informal Cairo, how we can understand, how we can perceive, how we can work, because as an architect, as designer, we are working a lot with these tools and with this skill. But at the same time, could be a piece of art. I mean, we can really become a great observer of the city. Well, just to close a bit with Kevin Lynch, as an artificial world, the city should be so in the best sense, made by art, shaped for the human purpose. This is a message I decided to take from Kevin Lynch for you as a good reflection and one of the interesting quotes from him. Well, the city. Let's arrive on the point. Okay, was the theory and let's say the input of the presentation, but now let's go through the city as an element. We are facing with this large and permanent human settlement, okay, and the city in general have a complex system of sanitation, utility, land use, housing, and transportation. We are talking about a very interesting machine. A big city or metropolis usually are associated by suburb and extraburb, and not only the core of the city, but we are talking about, and in Cairo, you know very well what we're talking about. Well, the role of urban design can influence health and the social and cultural impact in the locality. Urban design can influence the economic success of the socio-economic composition of the local weather, and encourage the local business and internship, attracts people to live there. I mean, we have an important responsibility for the future. I mean, as an urban designer, architect, or planner, or whatever, the way we are going to read the city, the way we are going to understand the city, and suddenly the way we are going to to make any change or to design any future vision, it's really important. It can really change the life of many people out there. Urban design element. By Kevin Lynch, I decided to start to select the way to read and to enter on this complex dynamic of the urban organism. Okay, but as architect, we have to really consider in a very simple way, especially for you student. Okay, which are the elements we are going to work on to observe? First of all, the street. Okay, when you're going to touch the city as an organism, the street is the most important because it's the first things also when you arrive in the new city or you start to work in the new site or you start your design studio project. Okay, streets are the connection between space and place, and as well space themselves. Okay, they are defined by the physical dimension, by the section of the street as a character, the size, the scale, and character of the building, the light them, because of course the streets are related with the building. Street range of Grand Avenue, for example, Champs-Élysées, in Paris, or to small intimate pedestrian streets. Doesn't matter. All of them are paths if we are talking with the language of Kevin Lynch. This is a classical image, okay, where the street is considered a space between the building and a void, let's say, an empty space of the city. Different type of the street, different size of the street, different connection. Probably this one is like a private street inside of the neighbor. This one must be considered between, I don't know, probably it's main road, and the first one is in a public space in the middle of or in the core of the historical town. Again, the street can have a very large section, can cross one side to another side, for example, including also this bridge, can be full pedestrian or can be a very large size, like in the new emerging city in China. A street in Cairo. Street in Cairo, this is a very interesting shot I found today. It's, people are in the street, and it's quite more complicated the normal city, let's say the city from America, the American city, the Europe city, because there is this issue of the informality, this temporality use of the street that give a special feeling to the city. And never look, this is not people really occupy and organize and habit the space. At the same time, in Cairo, we have experience of large infrastructure. And in that case, the scale of the city become large, and the scale of the street, it's very impressive, and the infrastructure probably is another layer, is another landscape. We are facing also in this new, let's say, is between the desert city and the new capital. We already had this experience with the desert city, where the city is progressing, the city is growing, okay, is under construction, and the role of the infrastructure in the middle of the desert, this impact with the landscape, which is a natural element of this huge build form. Through the street, what is important as a student, you have to really know the part of the street and the element, and always working through the section and the plan of the street, and consider the complex function. And when we have a street with many different type of the transportation, and always the relation with the building, how is the size of the street, okay? And of course, you're working by sketch, also in your site analysis, in your reflection, in your progress for your concept design. You try to highlight, to understand also the environmental aspect of the street, like the wind direction, and of course the node and the physical aspect. But how is working this space? The use of the sketch and the color, and considering the green element, the natural element, the green space, the tree, the pavement, how these elements are working in the street. This is part and this important character of the street. Absolutely. And we really need for a good environment, for a sustainable urban design, and for a quality. The space in between, and the way to consider the sidewalk, and this interface between the building, the private area, and the public area, semi-public, semi-private area, is really the core of the urban design too. And this is a kind of representation how to work on. When we are talking about this street and this space, okay, what comes in our mind? In Cairo, the Corniche, okay, this amazing space behind is between the street and the river, okay? And of course, this is the shot from the Alder Park, okay? The common space, also the paths in a very green area and the large public space. At the same time, is the important node of connection, as I've mentioned before, and this is important nodes in Cairo. Building, no, the core city are the most pronounced element of the urban design. They shape and articulate the space, okay, and the building form, the variety, the style through the different layer of the city are very important. And we have also different impact, different way to face into the street, okay, different style, different form, different material, and different scale. And this is in Cairo again. This is now a block of housing, and behind it's an important building in the downtown. At the same time, we have this skyline in the Zamalek Highland, and behind also the impact of heritage. Both of them you can consider heritage and icon of the city, but have a look how the building form can change its impact. And also in the desert city, in the new capital, something will appear little by little as a utopia and as a city of foundation. The skyline of the city, the composition of the different buildings generate this skyline. And this impact, different skyline of different city with different icon is easy to recognize Prague, is easy to recognize Barcelona, to recognize Rome, and different icon. And the color, the materiality of the facade, we are not talking only about the building, but we are talking about also the detail. Now, how is the color here is playing an important role? This is in Venice, Murano, a very nice island. And this is also in Turkey, and this issue of this jumba, and this window element, which one is another character of the urban environment, and the different shape, the roof, the final, this skyline and the element of the city. And of course here, for example, as an icon of the particular traditional architecture. But at the same time, this composition and this skyline must be very different. For example, if it's a waterfront, if it's a wall of the city, if the city appear as a composition behind the wall, or is matching with the particular, I don't know, element and topography, for example. All of these three are different skyline, different. Again, how is this important to recognize the skyline? How is important to represent easily by some sketch and look fixed through the Kevin Lynch theory, some important nodes and reference and landmark. Of course, can be more and more detailed. And this is an artist, okay? Is drawing through the memory. Okay, it's a very sensitive art because it's with autism, okay? And as the autism people, they have a special link and connection for such things. They are really, really advanced. And this is the way, this is the link of the page. I really suggest to have a look some video there. Means recognize the urban landscape through the memory and through the sketch. And this is the amazing work is doing. It's not only the single element, okay, the single building like is drawing here, okay, but going through the composition and arrive on the view of the city. And this is the full Manhattan and the full Tokyo. And this is such work, kind of amazing with the many detail, okay, and how it's trying to really understand and perceive this environment. This is a very good exercise for you guys. And this is Rome, is quite impressive, also the proportion. And I know very well because I was living there and working and study there for a long time. Let's say it's my hometown, and I know very well the connection between Vatican and Pantheon, but I never ever looked at something like that. Okay, this is a 3D view, and between 3D view, aerial view, and all these little details coming out through the amazing sketch. And also this one is another work, all the element of the city, the building form plus the green element of the park here, for example. The skyline of Cairo, the impact on the large view, this is the Nile view, again, different point of the Nile view and the different layer, depending on the point of view and the different context. And this is part also our memory, is part of learning from the city, is part of reading the city. Public space, back to another element of the city. Our grid public space, I have mentioned deeply in the previous lecture. Grid public space are the living room of the city, okay? And the place where the people come together to enjoy the city, to enjoy each other. Usually we are considered open to everyone. This is such an example of public space, no place where we are sitting, where we're spending our free time, we are meeting together, where we are going to relax, to drink a coffee, and also to have a simple work and contact with people. And we are coming together, especially for kids. It's interesting, this is a playground in the rooftop, and where we have some physical exercise, what we need for our health and for our benefit. Pedestrian network is another element of the city. And then there is a such reference here. And back to Cairo, people are in the street. Okay, the issue of the sidewalk in Cairo is quite interesting. And how these people are moving from one place to another way, they really know very well the city, and they're working very well with the mental map, I'm sure 100%. The vehicular access is another element of the urban design, and the issue of the barrier for disability, the transportation and the large connection in the city, as I mentioned before. Through the mobility, we easily can move from one place to another place. Different type of mobility, sustainable mobility. Now after the COVID, as I mentioned last lecture, how is important to back to sustainable transportation. And this is the connection in Cairo. We have a very large offer of connection from one place to another place. Okay, the classical subway, a metro station, and railway, but we have also tuk-tuk, we have also the ferry in the Nile, quite interesting, and we have this little bus stop to move from one area to another one. The urban pattern, let's go through this element, the composition, the urban pattern. Our city has a different district, as I mentioned through the Kevin too, which are structured by different urban patterns, giving each area a distinctive character. And when we are discussing about Cairo, through the color, you can easily recognize a different area, different zone. Okay, each zone has a different environment and color and material and element. Okay, here are two shopping areas, but one is in Old Cairo, Islamic Cairo, and another one is in the shopping mall. Very contrast. Also here, for example, is a night time. Okay, it's downtown and Islamic Cairo too. I mean, it's two different environments in the same mosaic, in the same part of the city. I suggest also to have a look. This is an interesting thesis. It's Frozen Cairo, if I don't remember. One is available in issue. And the way to represent and the way to mapping, because after the introduction of the theory, after through a different element of the city. Now let's see, as a student, as a designer, what we are going to do. And this is the way to come out to represent. This is a different period and a different zone of the old Cairo. And this is the way to use also a little diagram and a little section to recognize the public life there in the city. This one is also the work, because I was studying the old Cairo, how to match different scale of the map and the photo to recognize the place and to work on with some notes. Another interesting experience from Can Gell, I already mentioned the previous lecture, is in Istanbul about the public space. It's an interesting manual how to recognize the city and to work from the large portion of the city through the little zone with different graphic and way to represent the infrastructure and the built environment, and know how to match together the map with the photo to recognize with the note and the observation. This is regarding the topics of the traffic machine and work, the publication working very well with different layers in the city. And for example, one could capture my attention, there's a missing feeling of safety. This is the study of the light in the city in the night time. And I suggest, for example, this is a publication, Urban Code. I mean, I will use this semester in my course, because giving 100 lesson about all the element can really help you to understand the urban chain. And here, I think so there is another video. was not a promotion of Moleskine, but it's an input to suggest to you to really keep in your bag. Doesn't matter, always as a paper to sketch something, and to take a note to recognize the place where you're going. It doesn't matter if you don't travel too much, but also in your daily life, because this is the holy way. This is the holy way to really understand the city. Well, my lecture is done. Thank you for listening. I hope you can enjoy the presentation and the filter to reading the city. And good luck for everything. And if there is any question, I'm available to reply to you. Thank you. There is any question from the technical support? Shall I have any help?
Thank you, Doctor. There is no question until now.
I hope everything was okay, the audio, the video, and everything. Was the live perfect?
We are waiting for question.
Okay. I was asking if everything was okay. I mean,
Yes, all okay.
Yes, I'm here. I'm available. If they want to ask anything, no problem. How we are going to manage? You are going to read for me because I cannot check the question. Maybe you have to send to me the question by chat. Or if it's not question, it's simple a comment or I don't know, observation to discuss together will be really nice.
There is one question, I sent it.
Okay. In the chat. I didn't get the question.
Just a moment.
Okay. I'm going to reply live, okay?
Okay.
How many participants? Okay. How to make the urbanization adapt to the overpopulation? Very interesting question. The condition of most of all the city get worse due to the overpopulation and neglect. Well, this is a big issue because this is, thank you for the question. And I'm sure probably not only in Cairo, but in the MENA region, but in any mega city, this is a big problem. Now, the overpopulation and the high density, of course, it's a tricky issue. It's a big issue for us as a designer, as a planner to sort it out. Probably there is no receipt, but the possibility now to educate, to improve the sustainable mobility, can really help the people to move by bicycle, for example, with a sustainable transportation, or at the same time to improve the pedestrian area, to improve the quality of the urban environment, of course, the street. And probably, what is it? It's very, very important to don't concentrate many activity, but at the same time, we cannot decide where the people they are going and what they want to do. I mean, so we can design something, but then the city is going the direction of the people, because the people they are making space. And of course, through the sustainable design. This is my replica. I hope it's enough. And to good practice, have a look, a best result, have a look how important reference, how such city they come out with a good result. How is the policy, because this is the urban planning is mixed with the decision from the government, and how together is possible to design a better city for people. Any question more?
No, thank you very much, Doctor.
Okay. But it's your rules not to don't feel the people neglecting the city, because we have to design a good space and a better city. Okay, thank you to everyone. It's been a great pleasure for me. I will provide my presentation to the Studio 34, and I hope the workshop will continue very well. Okay, bye-bye.
Goodbye.